I know.
False start.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll come back to order. We are going to return to the item that was under discussion, which is the substation in the Camden neighborhood.
You need to do a statement out for the closed session.
Oh, I do. Yeah, I do. Actually, I'll do that first. Ms. Nelson. Thank you very much. All right, council entered closed session this afternoon, and during that time, council discussed the pending approval before the court of the city's redistricting plan for the 2015 elections. There was direction on negotiating position with the potential plaintiff. With that, we'll return to our discussion item. Colonel Monchon, you want to come forward? You want to join us up here? Or, yeah, right here's fine. Afternoon.
Sorry for the mix-up.
No problem.
So,
So
just went really, really fast.
We're early.
yeah,
We're early, it's not you.
yeah. Our discussion's been all over the place a little bit, just because we've bounced back and forth between a couple of items. But the discussion, just to give you a sense of the conversation thus far, was, and I'll characterize a little bit this in my terms, and my colleagues can add their own thoughts. But I think council in general was not opposed to the concept, but curious given the limited use of other substations. I'm curious whether or not this was the right investment. And again, in my terms, this is not a large amount of money. It's a nice donation. We appreciate Mr. Otis, of course, and everything he's done for the city, and appreciate this generous offer. But again, in the interest of improving community policing as discussed in here, or enhancing our existing community policing efforts, and the desire to get officers out there on foot and on bikes and in the streets and building relationships, is this the right investment? And that's kind of our question, I think, and you can see which way we're leaning a little bit, but we wanted to make sure that we had the expert in the room to talk it through with us.
One of the primary reasons that this is a good location is simply what we've been doing. As you know, our manpower right now, before we get the folks out of the academy, we've got 13 in the academy now. We had one that got hurt, and so they've got in June they'll graduate, and then they go through the field training. So towards the end of the summer, we expect to have those resources available on their own on the street. I'm sorry, on the street. And so in the meantime, what we're doing is manpower allows, and this weekend was a good example of that, is as the squad commanders have the excess people, we've been supplementing that a little bit with overtime, with grant funding and so forth, is putting the guys out on bikes. And if we have some overtime funds available, we'll have those folks will ride bikes along with any extra folks in patrol. Because as you know, we've been experiencing quite a large quantity of bike thefts, vehicle thefts, theft of vehicles, damaged property and so forth, particularly in that area. So our goal, and then those officers, 10 roll call, and then they'll deploy from headquarters. They'll deploy with their bikes from headquarters. So in this particular area and other areas of the city, as we experience problems, the good thing about having an area, although we don't have the manpower right now to staff it, 24/7 or anything like that, and may never have the resources to staff these areas 24/7, 365. It is a good spot to have your resources there, where officers can stop in, park the car, have their faces known or seen and so forth, and have the car in the lot and do their paperwork there. And also to store their equipment, their bicycles and so forth, because those areas would be alarmed, so they can actually drive there and deploy right from that particular area and then move to another and deploy from there. And also for community meetings, I was speaking with the chief about that, with different community meetings you can have there. This area is sufficient to have, it's a decent sized area to have a community meeting there. Also, any other meetings that the community might want to have or might want to have there. We could also do, Chief and I were talking about some seatbelt inspections for, not seatbelt, but car safety seat for children. And, sponsoring different things like that, getting that word out, kind of advertising that a little bit, to kind of get us decentralized a little bit from the headquarters building somewhat. Although the truth is, truth be told, I mean, we certainly don't have the manpower resources to staff those areas, 24/7. So, but that was the idea there, particularly in that particular site, and that particular area of town has been experiencing. Of course, things change. The crime data it shifts, but that seems to be just a very good. It's right in the middle of our SEPTED area, which is our crime prevention through our environmental design area, which is a part of the Safe Streets model. So that whole area right there is pretty much in the heart of that whole area right there to fall within the Safe Streets concept there. So we thought that would be we looked at some other areas, as you know. I think we were looking at the Decatur Avenue site, but that property was just didn't make sense. It was too costly to rehab that property so we're constantly looking. But this particular property, this particular site just sort of made sense as far as from a money perspective and kind of biggest bang for a buck kind of thing. We do have funds that provided provided we're allowed to move a little bit of money around within our budget. We could fund the utilities and so forth out of current year monies, so we wouldn't necessarily have to go back to the coffer to get any additional funding. So just a little bit of equipment in there, and alarm system and so forth to get it operational, to get it going. So that was the general idea of that, just to get the biggest bang for a buck with limited resources we have right now.
You mentioned officers on patrol stopping to do some paperwork there. Would they otherwise do that at headquarters?
They would otherwise a lot of that would be done at headquarters. There is some stuff they can transmit over computers via air card, via Wi-Fi or whatnot, but this would be an area that they could stop and kind of get their faces known, and be actually closer to that area also when we do get a call. The theory being that if we're not so busy where they're being deployed elsewhere in the city, that they would already be in that area to handle calls for service and different things that are going on for a little bit quicker response time.
Questions, comments?
One of the things that I said was, if with some of like the Princeton Homes substation, I don't know that we're using that at all, but you said there's a significant area at this location for community meetings. I don't think we can really do that at the other location.
No, the other location is much smaller. As you well know, we had another area in the Princeton Homes area that the city was actually the owner of that property. He was gracious enough to give it to us for a year, but it was beginning to be a little more costly to operate. It was a larger area, and he wanted to rent. He wanted to be able to rent that property out. You know what I mean? So, and I think the general idea there was that eventually we would have the manpower to actually staff that more so than it was. But the truth is, we don't staff the Princeton area as much as we certainly would like to, of course. But the officer that works that area, including the supervisor, we do go in there and open the door and let folks know, ride around and let folks know that we're at least open for business for a while there, and we try to do this best we can. But that particular building it is very small. It's very small. So you really couldn't have a meeting per se.
Well, I like the idea that you had about like the car seat checks, and that is certainly something that can be done in either place, but also bicycle registrations and things like that. We're having higher instances of bicycle registration. It makes sense to have those drives right there. And what you're saying makes a lot of sense. What we were discussing, I'm glad we waited for you, because what we were discussing was basically not so much the money, but the resources, the manpower, and how often could they actually be there that gives it a presence. But your comments about them doing their paperwork there and being in the sector in that area versus going all the way back to headquarters, there's some logic there.
The goal there is to knock on wood, if our staffing remains, keep our staffing up, and these folks, we actually realize the gain of these officers in late summer. 13 people will make a humongous difference in the way we're able to deploy, with the additional openings being able to send the majority of those hopefully through the academy in July. Realizing those folks about 8 months later, I think we'll see a big shift in the way we're able to operate and be able to get out into the different areas. Right now, we're really just trying to do the best we can through grant funding and overtime to supplement our patrol units to get some extra folks in these neighborhoods to curb some of the issues we're having. Because simply said, especially on the busy days, just answering the calls can be busy enough, let alone some of the additional problems we're having. So that's what we're trying to do, is supplement. With the realization of these new folks coming out, I don't think we won't be in that type of position. We'll have some folks readily available to deploy in some of these areas that we're seeing some spikes in crime. So and the patrol folks on the other end of the house can handle business as usual.
Are we still looking for space in like the Doverdale area, or?
Yeah, we are. We were really hoping this property from HUD was going to work out, but it's been sitting vacant for years, and It was, I think, in the neighborhood of around 40,000 just to get it rehabbed, and it far exceeded the value of the property, the building and the land combined. It just didn't make any sense for the city to invest in something like that. It just didn't. But it was a good location, but it just didn't work out.
Well, I just want to say first, I'm sympathetic to, the workload on your officers' shoulders right now. I mean, and I think it'll be fantastic if we can get all 13 of those candidates out, out of the academy and into training positions, and then out on the street as soon as possible. And then the remainder, 6, 7, whatever it is, in July. That would be fantastic.
Well, between the overtime funding we have through the governor's office, through Safe Streets, and some monies out of our own overtime budget and the patrol, we're making it work. It's working out really well, as a matter of fact. I mean, we've made the guys on the streets really making some good cases lately. So, but
good.
We're continuing to doing a good job with it. So.
Okay.
Yeah, just one question. How would you judge, and this is not a loaded question, because we were talking about this before, how would you judge if that site was successful? What are some of the metrics that you would look at that would say, this has worked? What would those be?
If we can decrease our response time particularly the Camden area, the Camden neighborhood, and then if we decrease that, because a lot of times what we get now is we'll get, for instance, you may get a situation where a lot of units are deployed on the north end.
Mm-hmm.
The north end has its own share of calls for the business community and so forth and so on. And it does require a lapse in time getting to certain areas from this north end down to the south end. So that would be a good measurement of what we can see as a decrease.
Do you normally do that with when you go into a project like this, where you say these are our goals, and this is how we're going to measure it, so you can tell whether it was a good return on investment?
Not in a formal setting. I mean, we do look at that. A lot of times, what we look at is some things that we refer to as they're hard to measure. For instance, customer satisfaction, in the sense that the folks in that area know that they have this area there. Maybe the police aren't there all the time, but it's something that is kind of dedicated to their neighborhood, and if we have some meetings there, if we have some function that go on, if it's a little bit of ownership in that, and the sense that we're at least there more times than maybe we would have been. So, and of course with the business community, and they like it because we're there, and it gives them a sense of the police are generally when they gives them the sense that, well, maybe if something was going to occur, maybe it's been avoided. So we call it the preventables, or the crimes that did not occur because you were there, kind of thing. So it's kind of hard to measure that, but we certainly we've had, and a lot of it is just perception. As far as the rest, I talked to Chief quite a bit about if statistically crime may be low, or maybe lower this week compared to the last week before, but if the community or citizens we serve think or believe that because maybe they were a victim of a crime recently, well, to them it's not down, it's up, because they were the victim of the crime. So we look at that as the perception. If the community, if the perception is that it's down, then we win. So a lot of those are really kind of hard to measure. So I'd rather certainly have folks feel safe rather than, hey, statistically it's safe, but if the reality is if you still don't feel comfortable walking out your down your street at night, then it's not, processually it's not safe. So I know that didn't really necessarily answer your question, but it's more perception based. I talked to the chief about that quite a bit, so we have those discussions. But analytically through data and so forth, crime trends are very strange. They're strange. I mean, you deploy certain things, even on a national level, it's hard to put your finger on some things that we do. We're trying things all the time. Some things work, sometimes some things don't work. We've got different things going on now to try to curb some of the issues we're having. So we have discussions every day about what we think is going to work. So,
okay.
Hope that answered your question a little bit. So.
Thank you. Anything else? Laura, anything else?
I still am a little hesitant. I don't like feeling like we're choosing one area over another, or picking and choosing, because we can we can have multiple substations in troubled areas, but how many people can you?
Right. Well, there was another area we're looking at on Benny Street, and the owner of that property, we had a project that he was working on, and that's going very great now. I think from a financial actually looking at 3 or 4 different areas at one time. This just happens to be the area in a very good location that could really use this right now, that we're constantly looking for different spots and different areas throughout the city.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hesitant too, and I think, you know, what it comes down to for me is that you're not asking for a large investment. So again, as a legislator, I'm inclined to, you know, give the chief and give the department the ability to, you know, test these things, given that it's not a significant investment. I just would love to know what impact a substation could have versus, and I know it's hard to measure, and I know it's probably also different based on the neighborhood. And based on the composition of, you know, commercial and versus residential, and, you know, probably some of the septet characteristics, you know, how good is the lighting, and,
Well,
you know.
exactly right. And the good thing about this area, it's a combination of a lot of different things. You've got the Goliath Shopping Center, you've got, you know, with Giant, you know, you've got Giant Food and all that. And then on the other side, you've got the residential piece over there. So it's a very good area to kind of test a lot of these, because it's got a combination of just, you know, multiple different issues and multiple different problems. So.
Sure.
And a lot of them are quality of life. When I say quality of life, I mean, not necessarily the part one, although we do get the violent offenses, not to the extent in other areas of town, but a lot of them are just quality of life in the sense of thefts or malicious destruction of property or drunk and disorderly and things like that, just the things that really aren't that difficult to clean up. It's just a matter of being able to put some resources towards it.
Well, is it your opinion, or is there evidence to show that even the presence of signage and maybe one of the blue light bollards, something like that at some point, with that sort of presence might actually radiate into?
There is evidence that was presented by the Governor's Office of Crime Control and Prevention, particularly for the septet model, that different things you do, particularly just with landscaping, communities, you know, just landscaping in different areas, the public areas and so forth. Keeping those areas up can make a difference.
Well, and I understand that, but I was thinking specifically related to a substation, that the signage, you know, Salisbury Police Substation, whether or not that would have a positive impact in the area.
If you can back that up with actually coming through with, you know, okay, you put the sign up, but if you can come through with, hey, we got the sign up, we're actually, and that might work for a while, but then when they realize you're really not there, then the sign's really not going to, you know,
Yeah,
it's not gonna be
I think it comes down to, even if you're not there all the time, but the visibility, giving that perception that you're there frequently, like those community meetings, like those seat belt, or car seat checks, and the bike registrations, and any of the community outreach that we can do that helps to cut down on some of those other things. The educational sessions about locking your car, and the stow it, don't show it, and those kind of initiatives. That can give the perception that you're there most of the time anyway.
Right, we even thought about, because you have the businesses right there, people in and out for lunch, just handing out the flyers that we already have, saying, hey, you know, please lock your vehicle. You know, that would go a long way for curbing some of the problems that we're having now. You know, just don't leave stuff out in the open and lock your vehicle.
Right.
It's a big problem.
See, I would say that based on the discussion that just happened, hours of occupancy, whether the guy's there for 15 minutes, what's the total hours of occupancy?
Right, number of.
That's a great metric.
Right.
You know, out of a 24-hour day, we're there half a day.
Right.
When you add all the 15s, 20s.
And the certain times a day also.
Right.
Add that to response times.
Yeah.
Do you
Now you
do you
got two.
track response times
We do.
from call to?
We do.
Okay, you do.
Right.
I mean, because, you know, the fire department has used that as the metric that justifies the
I can-
safer grant.
Yeah, I
for
can certainly
example.
get you that data, but I can tell you that anywhere in the city, the average is under 5 minutes for a call. And sometimes it's a lot quicker than that.
But that means that you have current data that you can compare.
Certainly.
the
To
new-
future data.
To future data, right.
Yeah, that's, I think, what we want to see.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So again, if, you know, again, I'm inclined at this point in time to say that I would be supportive
Yeah, we
of,
can absolutely do that.
you know, of enabling this, but I think it would be really helpful to know, you know, if this place is going, if this particular substation or substation program is going to be continued, to know what impact by metrics it has on the neighborhood.
Right, number of citizens contacted, whether it's workshop or whatever. I mean, how many people did you make contact with at that location? Exactly. I agree that, you know, this is, like I said, not a lot of money, and it's an opportunity for us to try some new things for the substation model in a neighborhood that is very engaged, very active, very, there are a lot of businesses, there are a lot of, it's diverse, that's the word I'm looking for. But I think that we have to take advantage of that, because as we do more and more of these, or these are more are brought to us, and we look at continuing the ones that we have, or adding more, I think we have to scrutinize those, because they're not always gonna be free.
Right.
And we need to know whether it's, you know, it's a good investment or if it's not.
Yeah, Benning Street location would have been another really good one, but right now it's just not workable, at least at that location. And these numbers are actually high, because I always look at the average bills, the average utility bills, things like that. So I look at the worst case scenario, and you know, and so I don't think it would be, you know, particularly that high, depending. The biggest expense will be just the initial computer with the alarm system in.
Oh, that reminds me, you mentioned community meeting, but we're gonna need to put chairs in there and things like that if we're doing something like that. Would you get those from Public Works or the zoo?
Right,
or
we try
this
to,
meeting?
yeah, we try to go out, and we're pretty good at finding stuff that, you know, at least to get us by for a while, so
Yeah.
that'd be our first option.
Okay.
And a lot of times we'll find something used or something we can pick up fairly inexpensive.
All right, well, maybe our next coffee with the council should, or certainly a future one.
Take place in the substation
place there.
or substations. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the status of the Princeton Homes substation?
It's, well, we just discussed how small that site is, you know.
I'm just wondering if
Yeah, it's
used.
operational.
Okay.
It's used, again, it's something that we continually stress with the supervisor to get their guys in there. And a lot of times, our best intentions don't necessarily equal, because other areas of the city, that it really sometimes depends on what are your priorities, you know, particularly with the issues we're having right now. You know, there's certain areas of town that demand
What's happening and where it's going on.
demand a lot more of our attention right now, with our limited manpower right now, so. But that's gonna change soon.
Good. Well, with that, I don't know where opinions are, but is there council consensus to move this forward?
Yeah, and I would like to say before we do this, that this is a management issue for you guys. And I don't want to get into the operation side of it, but I'm saying that whenever we do something, we should give it at the utmost our attention to getting a metric that we can test ourselves and see if it's successful.
Sure, I'll work with Chief on that.
By no means am I trying to get it, because I know nothing about police service. So please take it for
Yep.
where we're coming from. We're coming from the overall governance side of it.
Well, and I understand what you're saying, and the reason why I was hesitating to answer the question and the way I thought that would work is because I've been here, I've been at the police department quite a while, and I've seen the day where we had substations all over the city. But I think a lot of it depends on your engagement with the community, how you're deploying, what hours you're deploying, because you can have 1 million substations and it could fail.
Sure.
It could fail miserably. And we probably one of the best agencies at crunching numbers and calculating
Yeah,
data.
scoot back up to the microphone.
But a lot of it is working with the community, working with the business owners and things like that. You can have a few substations that it could be the model for the state. But you just have to, like you touched on, it is a management issue, but it's that engagement and working through and keeping an eye on all the current problems and listening to the folks in the neighborhood.
Different communities engage in different ways or don't
Right.
engage.
Exactly.
So that, you know, but if we get those metrics for all of them, then we can start to see, you know, where it is and isn't working and why, and look at why or whatever. You can, you know, look at the whys and hows, but from a financial perspective, and looking at, well, is it, if it's not effective here, then do we need to have one there, or should we double the resources somewhere else?
Or is there something we're doing that we need to do differently or better?
Right.
That's sometimes the case also.
Yes, I would move it forward.
Okay.
Me too.
All right. Well, with that, we'll move it to legislative session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Pass
Thank
it
you
on
for
to
coming in.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Sorry
Thank you
we
very much.
Yeah, thank
rushed you.
Colonel, can I get my paperwork back, please?
All right. Good evening.
Thank you, Dan. See you later.
Anything else for the good of the order? That's the last item on our agenda. All right, hearing none, I'll just note that next meeting is the April 13th regular meeting, and very soon here we'll be getting into budget session, so clear those calendars.
We resolved the one for the 23rd, are we just moving that one? That's the one that conflicts with the ESO.
I don't think so. I don't think that's being moved. I think it only conflicted like an hour or two. I could be
Well,
wrong.
there were other issues too. Diane and Kim were both gone that day, and, yeah, and there was something
Late-
else that popped up about it.
Latest I have is that it's on for 12:30 to 4. And we'll send out an email to council if that's,
Circle around whether.
yeah. If that is incorrect and it has been moved or will be moved, we'll send that out to council. But right now, what I've got is 12:30 to 4.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else? All right, we are adjourned. Have a good evening.